Imagine a game that assumes you are already compromised. Not wounded, not cursed, compromised. Planet Laika begins from a position most games never dare to occupy. The assumption that identity is unstable and that control is temporary at best. It does not slowly reveal this idea. It enforces it immediately. From the moment Laika sets foot on Mars, the game treats the self as something that can be bent, divided, overwritten, and eventually lost. Mars is not dangerous because it is violent. Mars is dangerous because it reflects. The planet emits a psychic contamination called evil mind. EM is not evil in the moral sense. It does not punish sin or reward virtue. It amplifies what already exists. Fear becomes louder. Desire becomes heavier. Certainty becomes lethal. Under EM, thought ceases to be private. It gains mass. It occupies space. In Planet Laika, the interior world leaks outward until there is no meaningful boundary between mind and environment. This is not symbolism laid on top of gameplay. This is the rule set. Mars is listening, and it responds. Planet Laika doesn't ask who you are. It asks how long you can stay that way. The mythology of Planet Laika makes its intentions clear long before the player fully understands them. In the distant past, humanity encountered the Martians, beings without faces, without individuality, without the internal division that comes from self-recognition. Humans, interpreting this as a lack, offered them faces, identity, difference. This agreement was called the Face Contract. The Martians did not survive it. With faces came comparison. With comparison came envy. With envy came hierarchy. Their civilization collapsed not through war or disaster, but through becoming someone. Identity did not liberate them. It destroyed them. Mars was left empty, but not inert. Earth eventually repurposed the planet as a dumping ground. Criminals, exiles, the unwanted, people already fractured by circumstance or guilt. Over time, the guidebook suggests Mars learned. Evil mind is not a curse placed upon the planet. It is a feedback loop, a residue, a learned behavior shaped by generations of damaged minds projecting themselves onto an environment that reflects them back without mercy. Mars does not judge. Mars mirrors. This is why Planet Laika cannot be understood as a traditional science fiction story. Mars is not an alien world to be conquered or understood. It is a psychological amplifier, a machine that takes what you bring with you and returns it in physical form. Laika is not special. He is simply next. From the moment Laika arrives, his psyche fractures into three functional identities. Not personalities in a dramatic sense, survival strategies. Force is the will to dominate. Violence as protection. Control through aggression. Desire is attachment. Beauty, care, longing. The need to be seen and held. Knowledge is distance, observation, control through detachment and analysis. These are not optional playstyles, they are imposed. The game slides you between them based on how you interact with the world and how much evil mind you accumulate. Each identity alters perception itself. Dialogue changes. Locations open or close. Characters respond differently. Entire sections of the planet become accessible or inaccessible based on how Laika is currently configured. And here is the crucial cruelty. Staying in one place too long is dangerous. Planet Laika does not reward commitment, it punishes fixation. Lean too hard into force, and Laika becomes brutal, narrow, isolated. Sink into desire, and he becomes dependent, distracted, consumed. Retreat into knowledge, and he becomes cold, detached, increasingly unreal. There is no true self beneath these layers waiting to be recovered. The guidebook is explicit about this. Laika's identity exists only as a balance between incompatible parts. Stability is not a destination. It is a temporary condition that must be constantly renegotiated. The game does not ask which version of Laika you prefer. It asks how long you can prevent any one of them taking over. The environments of Planet Laika are built to reinforce this philosophy with almost cruel precision. Locations do not change their physical layout, they change their meaning. Memory Valley is not simply a town, it is a recollection under stress. Its landmarks are stable, but their emotional weight shifts depending on Laika's mental state. At its center lies a frozen structure containing a giant locked in ice. It is not preserved as a monster, it is presented as something suppressed, a truth preserved by immobility. Elsewhere, an entire city exists inverted, turned inside out by the nightmare of a single man, whose obsession with oxygen and control was strong enough to overwrite reality itself. The guidebook is unambiguous. This place exists because someone believed it should. In the underground ruins of the Martians, massive structures dam the flow of evil mind itself. These areas can only be accessed by the personality aligned with knowledge. Emotion is a liability here. Curiosity is not. The world filters you. It does not open freely. Planet Laika repeatedly demonstrates that space is not neutral. It is interpretive. What you see depends on how you are configured. The same streets exist under different meanings, like a set that changes context without changing form. Mars is not transforming. You are. Enemies in Planet Laika follow the same logic. They are not animals or aliens. They are faces, obsessions given form, fixations turned hostile. Certainty sharpened until it cuts. Combat is psychic, slow, uncomfortable. There is no power fantasy here. Attacks feel awkward. Victories feel incomplete. Winning does not produce relief. It produces stabilization, a temporary alignment of internal forces that the game makes clear will not last. This is intentional. The guidebook emphasizes that combat is not meant to be cathartic. It is meant to be clarifying. Every encounter is a stress test, a way of revealing which part of Laika is currently dominant and what that dominance is costing him. Planet Laika does not celebrate violence. It documents its psychological consequences. The non-player characters are where Planet Laika becomes almost uncomfortably explicit. These are not side stories. They are projections of possible futures. Characters obsessed with beauty, who are terrified of mirrors. Characters who surrender all responsibility to authority. Characters who fracture so completely that they can no longer identify which thoughts belong to them. The guidebook describes NPCs as psychological case studies, not personalities. Each one embodies a failure mode. Planet Laika never warns you abstractly. It shows you consequences in advance. By the time Laika encounters Galil, the missing kernel, whose actions echo through the latter half of the game, The tone shifts towards something apocalyptic. Galil represents ideological certainty, the belief that evil mind can be confronted directly, purified, erased. His disappearance is not treated as a mystery to be solved, but as a cautionary tale. Late-game imagery leans heavily on religious language. Rebirth, new heavens, new earth, liberation of the soul. But this is not salvation in any traditional sense. It is psychological reintegration or collapse. There is no good ending. There is only the outcome of how well the player managed contradiction. Planet Laika does not offer redemption. It offers coherence. Briefly, this is why Planet Laika failed. It released into a market that rewarded dominance, mastery, and clarity. It offered instability, ambiguity, and discomfort instead. It was too slow, too strange, too uninterested in making the player feel powerful. It demanded introspection from an audience trained to conquer. It was not scary enough to be horror and not empowering enough to be fun, so it disappeared. But Planet Laika remains important because it accomplished something most games still avoid. It treated identity as provisional, as something shaped by environment, belief, and pressure, rather than essence. It refused to reassure the player that there was a stable self waiting at the end of the process. It asked a harder question. What if you are not broken because the world is hostile? What if the world is hostile because it reflects you too clearly? Planet Laika does not want you to win. It wants you to notice. And that is why it still lingers, quietly, on a dead planet that learned how to listen.